So we're back with another Perils in Paradise card review. Today we have all of the priest cards, both the legendaries, all the priest cards, couple different little archetypes. And I'm gonna try to go a little bit faster. I got to make it to a doctor's appointment here soon, so hopefully I get this done in time. This is first off Chillin Vol'jin, new 3-mana 3/3 Hunter Tourist. With Battle Cry, choose 2 minions and then swap their stats. So Hunter Tourist here, number 1. This will allow you to run Hunter cards from Perils in Paradise once you add this to your priest deck. And we have already seen one of the Hunter cards kind of got leaked. I think it was called something Macaw, and it repeated like a targeted spell cast at enemies. So spell synergies, like targeted spells, removal in particular is great for priests typically, which means that sounds like a pretty good fit. Like if that's actually a package that Hunter's going to get, then that could be a useful fit. It's not just like a bunch of like random Hunter damage cards or beasts or whatever that don't synergize. I mean, I guess it could be, but the one we've seen so far suggests at least a potential nice synergy for Chillin Vol'jin, which is good. That already gives him some high utility as the Hunter Tourist. And then this Battle Cry, I think, is generically pretty useful. It's not like amazing. I don't think you're going to be ever like insanely pumped about this, but occasionally you'll have a 1/1 and your opponent will have an 8/8, and swapping those stats will be nice. Just kind of stalls them out while creating a nice little threat of your own for basically only 3 mana. And it, sometimes it'll sit dead in hand waiting for that right moment. No, it's not a good play on turn 3 very often, maybe ever, but it's that situational utility is there, and you don't mind taking a hit sometimes because you're getting the hopeful upside of that Hunter Tourist effect. In particular, Priest has Puppet Theater, where they're making all these 1/1s anyway of Puppet Theater, which is like a really nice, reliable body for the Vol'jin to swap. We also just have like mini cards with a miniaturized keyword as well. So that would be another way to get some reliable 1/1s in the pool. And those are the small stats for you, and then the big stats from your opponent. There are also, of course, sneaky plays too, where you have like something small on board ready to attack, and you can play a big thing behind it and swap your own card's big thing stats onto the guy that's attacking for that sort of instant buff, kind of in essence giving those stats charge. Might be hard to weave all that together, but could be an occasional lethal opportunity that exists for Vol'jin. So in other words, pretty solid Battle Cry. I think the Hunter Tourist has potential based on the one thing we've seen so far. Some of those have felt shaky, some have felt more committed. So this is a committed one that's even better. So in all, I think pretty solid looking card. Moving on here to Narrain Soothfancy. This is the other legendary, 4 mana, 4/4 Battle Cry. You get 2 fortunes that are copies of the top card of your deck. So there's the fortune. Both of these get added to your hand, and they update in real time, and they continuously update. They're not like set based on what the top card is right now. So basically, you play Narrain, and you always get a little preview of what's on the top of your deck, but you can also, if you choose to, take an extra copy of whatever's on the top of your deck. Now, this is a one-time use thing. Like, once you play it, it's gone. It's not like the Mirage from the Paladin Badlands Reno legendary guy, Spirit of the Badlands or whatever. These are one-time use, but of course, just getting 2 extra copies of an awesome thing can be really amazing. The Titans on the top of your deck. Okay, I'm going to take an extra Titan. Be hard to get 2 just from an expense standpoint, but I'm going to take an extra Titan, and then some other awesome removal card shows up as the top card on my deck. I'm going to take an extra removal card. Boom, tons of extra value that otherwise wouldn't be possible, thanks to Narrain Soothfancy. And I will say, the 4 mana 4/4 is not probably too hard for a more controlling priest to weave in. Not the most exciting 4 mana play, but not crazy high overhead. And I like that it's sort of something you weave in earlier in the game for that probably strong setup later. Now, it's also worth noting we're going to get some cards to kind of directly support this. This is Twilight Medium. This one's going to set the cost of the top card of your deck to 1. So, talked about that Titan. What you can do is like play Soothfancy at any given point, and then, perhaps on turn 8, you play the Twilight Medium, set the top card of your deck, if it's good on turn 8, whenever, but as soon as turn 8, set that to 1. You have 2 1-cost top cards in your deck and your fortunes, and you could have 2 1-cost Titans, for instance, that you play alongside your 5/6 Twilight Medium. As soon as turn 8, that can become a really crazy potential swing turn. It's also worth noting we got this guy, you may remember it revealed earlier, the Over Planner. This allows you to actually pick, in many cases, the top card on the top of your deck. I say in many cases because it may not always be something that you're excited about, just depending on the luck of your draw. But you know, you will get to pick it. Sometimes it'll be exciting. And there are some ways to sort of manipulate all that together as well for some silly turns or silly results, or just, you know, finding the right thing for your fortunes to copy. So in essence, crazy value potential off of this, I think, is pretty good for control priests, especially Reno decks need bodies. They need cards to play. This fits in perfectly for that sort of thing, allowing you to duplicate cards in a Reno deck you otherwise couldn't. And then also some swing potential, some, you know, pop-off plays here with the Twilight Medium as well. I do, you know, we'll talk about this a little more, I guess, in a review here, but I do have some concerns about this one being worth it. You know, like, I think Narrain is always worth it because the value baseline is there, and that's good. Playing them both together just requires, you know, more mana commitment, more thought about it, and that might be a limiter, but I think both are still pretty nice. Now, we also have to note these are playable in Demon Hunter as well. We saw the Arana card yesterday. That one gives you you know, the damage redirect anytime you take damage on your turn, which will become very relevant. There's a new package coming that supports that directly. Doesn't synergize with Narrain necessarily, but Narrain, I think, is also a pretty cool card in Demon Hunter. Sometimes just finding, like, you know, 2 extra versions of a damage card or something could be a crazy pop-off that exists thanks to these fortunes. So I don't know, I think this is actually pretty great in a lot of different worlds. Making extra cards is of stuff in your deck is good. So moving on to the Twilight Medium, this is 6 mana, 5/6 taunt. Battlecry set the cost of the top card of your deck to 1, which we already talked about the synergies here with Narrain Soothfancy. I think that's really nice when it lands. It is something that, like I said, lands often very late. If you want the, like, full pop off, it's turn 8. If you want just like one good 1 mana card all at once, it's turn 7. Because of course, if you play this on like turn 6, you don't have that mana left over to get the extra version of the 1 cost thing. You can still, you know, play this on 6 and then just play an awesome 1 cost card on turn 7. It just doesn't necessarily add any extra versions of that awesome 1 cost thing via Narrain. Now, speaking on that side of the card, like, is it just good independently? Is it good on its own? Maybe. It really depends on deck structure, right? If you have a deck full of 1 and 2 and 3 cost cards, your Twilight Medium's average results aren't going to be great. If you have a deck full of 6 and 7 and 8 cost cards, those discounts on average are going to be much more meaningful. You're going to get like 4, 5, 6 cost discounts, which makes you feel a lot better about just playing the kind of stat body here. There will still be, I think, scenarios where it's hard to weave this in because you don't really trust, like, your survivability behind a meager 5/6 taunt on turn 6, and you're kind of taking that downturn for that potential swing later. And if you don't have, like, Narrain or some way to guarantee what that top deck is, you're also kind of taking some risk because you might have, you know, any given deck still going to have some low cost stuff. Even if you just hit like a 3-drop or whatever, it's like, oh man, the medium didn't really pay off enough for me in those instances. So I think there could be some awkwardness around, like, weaving this in and finding the right moment for it, or it being kind of conditional to the Narrain, which is a legendary, which isn't always going to be in hand. So that does make, to me, the Twilight Medium's a little harder to find space for. I think in Demon Hunter, that's especially true. This is a pretty expensive card traditionally for Demon Hunter stuff. So although the cost discounts here can be really significant and can be crazy swingy when they hit the right stuff, it's more of a consistency question for this one that's a challenge. So next up, let's talk about that priest package that's crazy for Demon Hunter. This is the first one, Acupuncture. This deals 4 damage to both heroes. And let me just go ahead and pull up Arana again so we get a reminder, even though I reviewed it yesterday and I know you're watching all my reviews. This is Arana, the Demon Hunter Priest Tourist. Damage your hero takes on your turn is redirected to a random enemy. And we theorized maybe Priest will get support for this, and boy did they. First off, for instance, Acupuncture. You play Acupuncture with an Arana on board, that 4 damage you take is instead going to be redirected, might clear a minion, might hit the opponent in the face, dealing 8 total damage here with the Acupuncture. I'll go ahead and kind of rifle through all these cards just to show them as well. This is the Brain Masseuse. Whenever this minion takes damage, also deal that amount to your hero. So again, some spiciness here. If you, for some reason, your opponent trades an 8/8 into this while Arana's on board, that 8 damage is going to come swinging right back at them. The Nightshade Tea here is the drink for priest. This one's going to deal 2 damage to your hero after dealing 3 damage to a minion. Now, some of these, like, you know, it's a little harder to imagine with Arana. Like, yeah, you can play the Nightshade Tea with Arana, but you're already looking at a 7 mana turn, and it's only redirecting 2 damage. That doesn't sound so great. I think the Masseuse 2 is, like, just kind of hard to work with Arana in those instances. Like, how's that all going to line up? You could damage this yourself, of course, but it's kind of a weird turn. Like, yeah, you could technically use the Nightshade Tea and stuff on it, but still kind of clunky because that 5 mana overhead on Arana is tough. And then also we have the Sauna Regular. This is a payoff. Costs 1 less for each time your hero has taken damage on your turn. Notably not damage, of course. It's instances of damage, which actually will be much easier to activate in Demon Hunter perhaps than Priest, because Demon Hunter has those hero attacks. Anytime they equip a weapon or use their hero power, trading into a minion taking self-damage, it's going to activate this a lot faster. Just cleaning up 1/1s and stuff become pretty nice discounts here on the Sauna Regular. So this package does all go together, but for me it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, this card looks great with Arana to me because it's like really cheap and it has a good number attached to it for its cost, whereas like Brain Masseuse actually sounds kind of awkward for Arana, and Nightshade Tea, it's kind of in the middle, but the 2 damage doesn't necessarily seem that great for Arana. So it's like, maybe, you know, Demon Hunter uses a little bit of this selectively, but perhaps not all of it. Like, maybe Demon Hunter grabs Acupuncture and Sauna Regular, but maybe they ditch like Brain Masseuse or Nightshade Tea. I mean, Brain Masseuse actually kind of looks insane, so they probably still take this anyway because it's a freaking 2/4 on turn 1 for the record. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean they're all in on all of it. Now, as far as Priest itself using this kind of independently, this is the start of a pretty nice little synergy package. And I think when you look at all of these cards, Brain Masseuse in particular just looks insane as a 2/4. Like, that is such a strong body. I think Wild has some scary stuff for this. Wild already does like Pirate Priest and like Shadow Priest aggressive stuff. This looks busted in that scenario, but still in Standard, a 2/4 getting out ahead on board, like any board based deck that's going for aggression is really going to value that and won't care much about the downside. And in this case, the downside sometimes gets you like a free 5/5, right? So it's kind of even an extra bonus there. So the question is it enough? There's only 4, or actually I forgot one, 5 cards. Hot Coals here is kind of the AoE side of this. Again, this one's weird for Arana because it's not like dealing extra damage. This is more like a payoff than a setup. Yeah, that's all for the self damage stuff. So is this like self damage Pain Priest enough? It's only 4 or 5 cards. That doesn't really feel like enough to build a reliable deck or game plan around it for Priest, because if you don't hit like your Acupunctures and your Brain Masseuse early, then you're going to have these Sauna Regulars that are just completely stuck and dead in hand, right? Like, Demon Hunter has more reliable ways to take that damage and kind of piece through all of this. So it's weird. I think this is pretty interesting looking in Demon Hunter. I could see that coming together. In Priest, I don't know. Like, I will say Acupuncture is just 4 damage, and sometimes if you're playing the aggressive deck and you're out ahead and you're just looking for lethals, you can often risk that 4 damage yourself in exchange for like a big burst damage hit. So, you know, a deck that's just aggressive and runs a few of these is nice, but will it be able to run Sauna Regular? Like, is that actually there, or do you just run Acupuncture and Brain Masseuse in your aggro deck and you're an aggro Pirate Priest and you just don't have the ability to afford this because the consistency's not there? I think we're gonna see these kind of split off and like siphon off a little bit. I also think Nightshade Tea is maybe just not that good. The numbers on this one just feel a little wonky to me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with deal 3 to a minion. We've seen that effect so many times, but the upside on this one is, again, really restricted to basically Sauna Regular as your payoff, because I don't think Arana is going to be worth it in this case. I mean, technically Hot Coals is a little bit of a payoff as well, because you know, you want to take the damage, but it's only like 1 extra damage on your AoE, and that is suddenly like a 5 mana turn. That's still not really all that exciting. So this one to me, numerically, you know, I'm not saying it should be able to go face, because that would be, you know, 9 damage here across all these cards. That would be too much. But something mathematically about this just doesn't line up right to me. And particularly, does it really need to deal 2 damage to your hero? Because the rewards for this are based on times your hero has taken damage, at least for Sauna regular. Again, Arana technically is otherwise, but I think that's just weird for Arana as a 7-mana line. It's just, it's too small in that case. So I don't know. I feel like they could have picked a path there and sort of, instead of sort of splitting the middle, and that makes it clunky. So in essence, what I'm saying is, and I guess I'm reviewing all of these as one block, I think Acupuncture looks really high potential for damage output, lethality, and a really aggressive deck. I think Brain Masseuse makes a lot of sense in an aggro pirate package. This is just a really aggressive minion early that's sticky and threatening. You don't care about the downside. I think Nightshade Tea looks far more awkward than the rest. It's not inherently bad, it's fine, but it's not like the reason to do this or the thing I'm excited about, or really even all that synergistic in my mind. I think Sauna regular is a really nice payoff for Demon Hunter, where it's more easy to activate this, get it down to that 2/1/0 mana where it gets really exciting. But for Priest, I think this one might be a lot more challenging because there just aren't enough pain cards to reliably activate it. Yes, some games you'd hit all of them early and have the nuts. Other times Sauna regular is going to get stuck in your hand as like a 4-mana card, which really isn't that good, right? Some of you will tell me a 4-mana 5/5 taunt is good. It's really not. It's really not that good. It has to get cheaper. And like Hot Coals, I know we didn't talk about this one as much. This is a fine AoE at a baseline because it does go face. So I like that for the lethality. For some of these more aggressive decks, I like that it has some reach and swing potential. But the upside on this again is not like crazy high on the self-damage side of things. So basically a mixed bag here for this package. I see some things to like on the aggro side, and then I see some things that seem far more situational and probably limited to Demon Hunter. And then our final 2 cards here for Priest, we got a couple just little mixed bag things. We got Rest in Peace, a 3-mana shadow spell. Each player summons their highest cost minion that died this game, which, you know, if you're running big crazy stuff, a Titan and so on, then yeah, you can definitely net an advantage here. I will say the symmetry of this is kind of unfortunate. It's gonna make it where there are situations it's just super risky. Your opponent's a Death Knight and played a Reska or whatever, and it's like, oh god, I'm pulling back the Reska. Not always a bad thing, but kind of scary and kind of hard to deal with. Or, sometimes just summoning them in 8/8 or whatever randomly is like, oh man, I brought back a Mountain Giant or Molten Giant. That's hard to deal with. This is a problem. So it's like, how much net difference is your minion in quality going to be over theirs? Some matchups will be notable, but is it really worth 3 mana? Is it worth the risk? And how late does this have to come down to be worth it? Because often the big thing you're playing is going to come down much later in the game. And at that point, small advantages between a big minion and a small minion probably don't add up as much on like turn 8 or 9 or whatever. I guess an extra Titan can be pretty nice, but I wonder if this is worth it as a card that kind of sits dead in hand for a long time. I don't think it is when you count for that like delay and the symmetry. That's probably too many downsides for this one. And then finally here, Sensory Deprivation. This is a 6-mana shadow spell. This one summons a copy of an enemy minion, and then if you have 20 or less health, you destroy the original, which I guess I should have technically included this in the Pain Priest group. I didn't actually think about it because of this health condition. But I don't really think it synergizes well with that at all. It's just a 6-mana spell is really expensive for a package that seems like it wants to go much faster and wants to be ahead on board. This feels far more controlling, and it's something I think you're probably playing in a control priest when you're behind, you've taken damage, and that 20 health is really about, they're whacking me in the face, not I'm whacking me in the face. So for me, this is more of a kind of a random control card of sorts. And I don't think it's an especially good random control card either. I know, again, there's been instances where copying a Titan is really good, and certainly copying the Titan and removing the Titan all at once does sound pretty interesting. We had I don't know what Shattered Reflections, I guess, in old, we know how powerful copying Titans can be, but that one was all about value. Yes, it didn't deal with the Titan, but often when you copy the Titan, that allowed you to deal with whatever thing you copied, right? They changed that one, of course, to being non-Titan cards since then. It's not a great example, but I'm thinking of high cost priest cards that copy things. Ultimately, the swing is there on this card, but it's another one that's pretty situational, and it's another one that doesn't make an impact until much later in the game. And I wonder how often it hits versus how often it sits stranded. because some matchups there just won't ever be good targets for this. There is no Titans in some matchups. They're only playing 3/3s and they're swarming you down, and your sensory deprivation just feels terrible when you've taken all this damage. You're playing into an aggro deck. There's just no good targets. And when there is a Titan, when there is that matchup where you do have that value battle, Priest has so many ways to win that value battle, so many ways to remove things, that this just starts competing against really tough competition. Not to mention, you're pretty likely to have more than 20 health a lot of times in those like grindy value battles, because you're healing yourself up over time or whatever. You're not necessarily taking all that damage. And again, I don't think this really fits all that well into the Pain game plan. I don't see all of that meshing into a single deck. So it's again just like an awkwardness to this. There is that like, where do I actually play this? I can concoct scenarios in my brain where this feels really good, but I don't see those scenarios unfolding in real gameplay very often, which probably makes this one feel like a clunker that gets stuck in hand. So all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Chillin Vol'jin is a 4-star card. Narrain Soothfancy is a 4-star card. Twilight Medium is a 3-star card. Acupuncture is a 4-star card. Brain Masseuse is a 4-star card. Nightshade Tea is a 3-star card. Sauna Regular is a 3-star card. Hot Coals is a 4-star card. Rest in Peace is a 2-star card. Sensory Deprivation is a 2-star card. And yeah, there you go. That's it for the Priest stuff. I wonder if Hunter will come in and open up any opportunities for some of these cards that kind of extend maybe the Pain package in Priest and so on. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out. I mean, we did already see, like we said, copies of like targeted enemy spells. So I think Sensory Deprivation could be copied by the Hunter card we saw. The Macaw would like repeat this effect, which might help. But again, Priest has so many great options for that. I don't know if it fits. Anyway, all in all, I like the legendaries on this. It's pretty cool to see a couple different spins on archetypes here. Some support potentially for like Pip as well with Twilight Medium and so on. So interesting little set. That said, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.